She was indefatigable, courageous and self-denying. The widow's friend, the orphan's mother, the fearless and unwearied nurse of the sick, the poor helper of the poor. She was Kitty,
the saint of the slums.
Society in Ireland prior to the famine was a very mixed society. At the top you had the landlords who were aristocrats. You had a middle class who were merchants, some of them ship owners, some of them big farmers. But the largest group were a very poor class of peasantry. Kitty Wilkinson I would take as a good example of the life of an ordinary person in those days.
Well, she was born in Londonderry, or Derry. Her mother was Irish and her father was an English sailor, a soldier, and her mother thought that they'd have a better life in England, and so they booked a passage over to Liverpool.
Yes, she was 9 years of age when the family left Derry to come to Liverpool. When the sailing ship, which got into Liverpool Bay in 1794, a huge storm came about. Sailing ships in those days, in a heavy storm, they were just like a cork bouncing up and down, could be thrown about anyway, you know.
And sadly, the ship was wrecked just outside Liverpool.
You know, imagine 1794, it was just really a rowing boat with a sail, and they couldn't even use the sail because of the terrible storm. And they rowed out to that stricken ship and saved Kitty.
Kitty was saved, her mother was saved, and her younger brother. But she also had a baby sister.
The sad thing is that the baby in arms was dragged out of her mother's arms by the wind. And her husband also disappeared. So she lost her husband, she lost a new baby. So Kitty was left with her mother and younger brother.
But they landed in Liverpool. They were very poor. Kitty, who was still a child, had to go out and earn money to look after them.
When they got ashore, they eventually went to work for a local landowner. It was for a woman by the name of Mrs. Lightbody.
She took her into her own home, so Kitty worked as a servant at that time.
Now, because of Kitty's mother's state of health, as a result of losing her husband and the baby, she had to let them go after 2 years. And they were then taken to Caton Mill, outside of Lancaster.
She was sent to work in a cotton mill over there, and she was there from the age of 11 to about 18 or 20.
I've always believed that she had an easier time than most, and the reason being, one, that she was a very intelligent young lady. The other one was that she could read and write. When she was 21, she was free to leave the cotton mill, and they begged her to stay there. but she wanted to come back to Liverpool and find her mother. So she found accommodation for her and her mother in Denison Street, and Kitty used to go out to work doing domestic work, anything to look after herself and look after a very sick mother. By 1812, she met her husband, Emmanuel de Monte.
She had a boy, a little baby with him, and she was pregnant with her second child when he was lost at sea.
So, you know, here's poor Kitty losing members of her family, and now she loses her husband when she's expecting her second child.
And she was left as a widow to look after two little babies, two children, and her mother. Then romance came to her again, and she met Tom Wilkinson, who is my great-great-great-uncle.
And obviously a very good man. He took Kitty's mum on and the children as well, you know, so give you an idea of the sort of man that he was.
And one day was walking the streets of Liverpool and heard a young lady singing one of the Lancashire songs that he knew well, and he went to find who it was and discovered that it was Kitty.
My young love said to me, my mother won't mind, and my father won't slight you for your lack of kind.
And some of the old accounts say that he met somebody that he had once loved and lost at Caton.
It will not be long, love, till our wedding day.
And they got married eventually, and they lived together for 25 years. So Tom was very much part of Kitty's social world.
No, it won't be long, my love.
By 1832, which would be 9 years after Kitty married Thomas Wilkinson, cholera broke out in Liverpool.
Kitty, on her own initiative, started this practice of cleaning bedding and clothing, as today we now know, infected bedding and clothing.
She decided that she would open a little wash house in her home, because as I said early on, she had running water, but she also had a little basement with a little boiler in the basement, and she started getting people coming into the house, and she would get them to disinfect their clothes before they started to wash them. And Thomas put up clotheslines in the backyard and everything else.
And the result of that was that people in Kitty's house and the surrounding houses did not suffer from cholera.
William Rathbone and Elizabeth Rathbone realised what Kitty was doing and sent word to Kitty to say that they would give her all the help that she needed in the way of soap and disinfectants and other utensils in order to keep going with this little wash house.
So Kitty, although she directly saved the lives of those people living near to her, she indirectly saved the lives of how many thousands, I don't know.
William Rathbone, who was a member of the council at that time, went to the council and said because of the outstanding work Kitty Wilkinson had been doing with this wash house that she set up, Liverpool Council must build a permanent wash house. He asked Kitty and Thomas if they would look after the wash house and become joint superintendents.
When I speak to you know, women about my age, they remember going to wash houses. All those things that she did are now part of life, aren't they?
The practices which we take for granted today, that you should regularly have a shower, that you should thoroughly wash your clothes, that you should wash your hands, all those things did not used to be common practice, and it was through people like Kitty that those practices were introduced.
Throughout the country it was copied.
A few years later, Kitty was sent for by the Lord Mayor of Liverpool in 1846, and she was taken in a big landau pulled by 4 horses. The Lord Mayor's landau, you can imagine it, Kitty sitting in that with Thomas, and taken to the outskirts of Liverpool, and she was to meet members of the royal family, and Kitty was presented with a silver tea service which was inscribed by Queen Victoria. The awful sad thing about it, 2 years later she lost her husband Thomas, so she was left completely on her own in Upper Frederick Street. In 1860, so this would be about 12 years after Thomas died, it was a friend of Kitty who was the informant to say that Kitty had died. A tragic end in many ways, you know, because she was really on her own when she died. There's so much sadness in Kitty's life, but nevertheless, she was a battler who would overcome everything that was thrown at her. So after her death, she was buried at the back of this beautiful cathedral in St. James Cemetery, where she still is today. And if you go down into that cemetery, you'll find it's been turned into a garden of rest, and all the headstones are all down the perimeter, but one headstone that they've never moved, and that's Kitty. Yes, so basically, you know, that is the story of Kitty Wilkinson, you know. An angel, without a doubt, an angel.
I think the title Saint of the Slums is a good title.
I would like the world to think about Kitty for their great humanity. I'd like to think that we could learn from Kitty that we're all important, you know. Each and every one of us, and that we should look after one another. Not to create a world where we destroy one another, but to care for one another. And that's Kitty.
Kitty was an Irish born, she was Liverpool's gem. A migrant off through Emerald Heart, cobbled streets now to attend. Her father drowned, her sister too, and her mother widowed free. For Kitty's fate was carved for her an eternal